Welcome, welcome. I am Natalie Lucier, and I'm super excited to introduce you to Lethia Owens. And she is incredible. So, first of all, she is the founder of Game Changers International. She's an international speaker, author, and coach. And she has so much to teach us today, all about online branding and in person branding, basically personal branding. So, thank you for being here, Lethia.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Natalie. I just love who you are and what you represent. And I'm just really an advocate of your brand. And so I'm really honored to be here today.
Oh, well, thank you. That's so sweet. Okay, so let's dive in. I think you have such a great story, and I want to hear, how you got here. I think a lot of people are always curious, they see someone online and they're like, they're so successful, but I don't know, what took them from starting to where they are now. So can you give us a little bit of that background story of how you got here?
Absolutely. And I'll make it quick. I'll make it brief. So Natalie, most people don't realize this, but I was a high school dropout. And it really interesting. I share that because some people look at a brand like mine or yours and like, wow, she's so amazing. And they don't realize the journey to get to where we are. And so, being a high school dropout, I eventually went back to school. And I remember my boyfriend in my junior year said, you need to take the SAT. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a cosmetologist. And so he kept saying every time, I asked to go to the mall or to movies, he would say, take the SAT and study for the SAT. And I would. And so for a year, I did that. And it came time to take the SAT. And he said, ask your parents if they'll pay for you to take the SAT. I did. We were so poor, we couldn't even afford to pay attention. And so my mom said, I don't have money for an STD test. And I'm like, Mom, it's not an STD test, it's an SAT test. But my parents didn't expect me to go to college. No one in my family had ever gone to college. And so I went ahead and my boyfriend paid for the SAT. Thank goodness. And I just circled schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, and then my local university. Well, 6 weeks later, I got called into the principal's office. And when I went into the office, there was a gentleman who had a paper and he was shaking it saying, Lethia, we have a near perfect SAT score, but no college application. Like, what gives? And I was like, oh, I'm not in trouble. That's easy. I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a cosmetologist. And he was so perplexed. And he was like, what? And then he said to me, hey, what if we give you a full ride? And I said, sir, I don't know you. I am not getting in a car riding with you anywhere. And he said, oh, that's not what I'm talking about. It's a full ride scholarship. So I went on to go to school. I got a full scholarship, became a computer scientist, majored in computer science and mathematics, went on to get a master's in leadership. I have 2 honorary doctorates, finishing up another master's in it's an executive program for digital marketing. And I say all of that to say that sometimes we have to have enough faith and someone else's belief in us until our own belief catches up. And that experience taught me what it meant to be a game changer, because my mother quit her job and got a job as a security guard at night so I could go back to school because I got pregnant, right? And then my not the jerk that got me pregnant, but my boyfriend later, he was the second game changer I ever met because he saw something in me that I didn't see. And I'm no dumb chick. I married that handsome hunk of chocolate, and we will celebrate 30 years of marriage next year. But I share that because, when I stepped into my corporate setting, because I had seen game changers, which my body of work is all about being a game changer. How do you leverage who you are and what you have? And how can you build a brand so remarkable that you can change the game for yourself, for other people, and so forth? But those are 2 great examples of being a game changer. And I came to realize that when I stepped into my first corporate job, I didn't have to be who someone else wanted me to be. I could be who I am on purpose and without apology. And instead of assimilating into my work environment, which was pretty much predominantly white middle-aged men, as an IT professional, I decided that I would integrate. And integration is all about finding your fit, figuring out who you are, what are your gifts and talents, what do you bring to the table, how do you refine those things, and then bring them to the place where you are contributing and find your fit. Because when you assimilate, you lose something. But when you integrate, you bring the wholeness of who you are into the work that you're doing. And so I decided to become a professional speaker. Actually, my VP at my job at State Farm said, "Hey, Lethia, you're bigger than any opportunity State Farm could ever give you. You were meant to speak and to teach." And I said, "Is this how they fire people nowadays?" But I wasn't getting fired. She had spent 2 years cultivating me, telling me to go get a coaching certification, sending me out to speak. She was grooming me for something beyond State Farm. And that just blew my mind. And so when I realized that personal branding was my lane, within a year of starting my speaking business, I decided that I would focus on personal branding. And because I came out of IT, that led me to building also a web development company. So for my grandchildren, I decided to start a company so that when they graduate from trade school or college, they could become a part owner with me. And so the company that we build membership sites through is the company that will eventually be inherited by my grandchildren. And so that's how that's the journey of how I ended up here. But I wanted people to know that my beginnings weren't all that promising. They were very humble. And if you look at the start, you might not imagine that I would be where I am now, owning 4 companies and traveling all over the world, teaching people what it means to be a game changer and how to run your company as a game changer.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that is an incredible story. I didn't know all those pieces, so that's amazing. And yeah, I think you're totally right. You had those different experiences and different people that were the game changers in your life. And I think now you're the game changer for other people. So that's really exciting that you were able to kind of take that and bring it and pass it on to more people. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you talked about personal branding, and obviously I love how you can use personal branding within your corporate work or corporate career, but also online in a more entrepreneurial ways. So, and I love from your website, you say, you have a personal brand, whether you know it or not. So how do people realize, like, what is my personal brand? Like, how do I cultivate that? How do I formulate that better, right, for the goals that they have?
Right. So one of the ways is they can take a personal brand assessment and find out about, basically it's an assessment to find out how others view them. Or they can just ask, people a series of questions like, if I were a kitchen appliance, which one would I be and why? Because sometimes people have difficulty just talking to you, Natalie, about who you are. But if you said, hey, if I were a kitchen appliance, which one would that be? I had someone once say and they were saying this about a client, and they said, you're a Cuisinart. You're not all that fancy, but you get the job done and you're the best at doing it. And so she couldn't understand how to take that. And she's really a kind of a plain Jane, meaning that she doesn't really do her nails, she doesn't really wear makeup. So she's not really all fancy in her packaging, but she is phenomenal in her execution. And so it was easy to kind of extract, what do people think about me? Because, we had this question, if I were, famous actor or actress, who would you say I, were and why? Also, what are 6 qualities? Asking people, what are 6 qualities you see in me that you value? And when you start seeing, like, I kept seeing competitive as my number one trait when I first did my very first assignment. But the problem is that they weren't saying competitive in like the yay. They were saying competitive as in the leave dead bodies and wounded people behind you. So I realized that wasn't how I wanted my brand to be perceived. And I wanted my brand to be more transformational, more helpful, more other focused. And so I began to shift how I showed up. And when I did it the second year, actually for every year since the second year, so this has been now 16 years, the word inspiring has been the number one word used to describe me. And I intentionally, created that because of how I choose to speak and how I choose to live and how I choose to work. So an assessment and then just asking people for their input is really helpful. And with the advent of social media, you can do a poll easily. If you're brave enough, right, you can do a poll easily, or send people to a link and say, hey, I'm going to randomly pick a person and give them $100 gift card if they, would respond and to this survey. So that's one way to figure it out. But also you have to look inside and ask yourself some tough questions. What sets me on fire, right? Because those things that energize you are typically clues to things that you are created to do. And those things that drain you are clues to things that you should delegate or pay someone else to do. So looking at your brand and, even what you're gifted at and what you have to contribute to the world, it really is you getting clear about how do I want to be perceived? And that took a lot of journaling for me, frankly. I decided I want to be perceived as someone who is extremely smart, extremely savvy, and someone who serves, right? So I know now this is how I want to be perceived. So when I show up in spaces, I'm always trying to be the most helpful person in the room. I don't hide my brilliance. I let it shine. And I am a teacher by nature. So I teach, I share, I help. And so that's just how I've chosen to show up. But because I know how I want to show up, it has given me clarity. When you are clear, I have learned that clarity breeds speed and confidence. And as an entrepreneur, we need a lot of that because things are always changing and we have to sometimes do things that we've never done because of everything that's constantly changing, right? So those are some, looking at the characteristics of who you are and then deciding how you want to package those things is another way that people can really start thinking about their personal brand.
I love that. Yeah, because I think a lot of times, we kind of accidentally build a brand and we're like, oh, like I didn't quite think about it before I started posting on social or, writing emails or blog posts or whatever. So thank you for sharing that, just being more intentional about it.
And I want people to know that you can remake a brand. Like, don't, just because you pick this brand name or just because you've gone down this path doesn't mean you have to stay there, right? You can actually rebrand if needed to get closer to the core of who you are. And I've done that several times and am so excited and so glad that I listened to my intuition and followed my gut about what changes were needed. And so because of that, right, if branding is branding, but people, when we look at Coca-Cola and Pepsi, we're like, oh, pick a brand and you got to stay with it for life, right? But we're in the world of small entrepreneurship. We're small business owners. And I would much rather you get started today with what you think it is and refine it over time than to hide for 3 years trying to perfect it. That's just my philosophy.
Oh, no, that is brilliant. I totally agree with that. It's once you get it into motion, it becomes more clear because you can say, oh, that didn't quite feel like me, or, yes, people resonated with that and that felt really good, so that you can kind of know if you're on the right track or not. So that is brilliant advice. And you mentioned something about the real you. And I think you talk about that in, how do you reconcile sometimes what is your personal brand that you put online, the real you, and then the work that you do in the world. So how can people align those so they feel totally comfortable and, in alignment with all of those pieces?
Yeah, you gave the answer. It's alignment, right? And so my philosophy is, and this is just the world according to Lethia Owens, and I will just tell you that this is a fabulous world that I live in, right? But the world according to Lethia Owens is to share with the world one version of you. So your personal brand is your personal brand is your personal brand. So there's not a personal private Lethia and then a personal brand Lethia in my business and then a brand for my family and then a brand for Facebook. And it takes courage, but I've just decided to be who I am on purpose and without apology. And I'm going to share who I really am wherever I am. And it keeps me from being schizophrenic, if you will, right? Like having all of these different personalities that I have to try to manage and keep up with. So a lot of people use Facebook as fake book, right? There's this woman, I'm not going to call her name because I am not about embarrassing anyone. But there's this woman who has a phenomenal Instagram and Facebook persona. Like you look at it and it looks like out of a storybook. I mean, she's on a horse and there's a sunset and she has this flowy gown on. And I'm like, wow. You know how many hours and how many people and how much money it took to do that? Now, if I'm ever somewhere in the desert on a horse in the sunset, I'll probably take a picture, but I'm not going to do all of that just to get a perfect picture to share on Instagram. That's just me, the world according to Lethia. And I've had some amazing coaches. And I remember Brendan Burchard sat me down one day and he said, Lethia, people are far less impressed now. This was probably about 4 years ago. He said, people are far less impressed now with manufactured brands than they are with the person who is really the person behind the brand. And so when we look at people like Amy Porterfield and people who just show up and they're just themselves in every context, look at me, I'm just myself, right? People are magnetically attracted to people who feel real in a world where everything seems fake, right? And so that's been my strategy. And that's the strategy I often share with my clients. And people often say, I just did a 3-day conference and some of the speakers are people I've coached and mentored. It's like, how should I dress? Dress your brand. What? Dress your brand. How do you want to be perceived? Well, I want to be perceived this way. We'll go up with some glittery shoes, some blue jeans, and a t-shirt, right? That's okay. I don't have to wear a suit. No, if that's not your brand. So really the word alignment, you shared it, is the perfect strategy. Being, who you really are, and then having the courage, even if it's sometimes your hair is messed up, or even though you may not have gotten enough sleep, but you're like, I got to share this with you guys. I had the wildest dream last night. It's okay if you don't have on the perfect outfit, because people will fall in love with that, So, yeah.
Thank you. That is so helpful. And yeah, I think it's totally true. And I see it too. It's like the high production value, super put togetherness can also be a little bit of a turnoff for people because it feels not attainable, right? Where it's like
there's a disconnect. Yeah, there's a disconnect. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so one of the things I love about personal branding that you talk about is that it can help you attract the right opportunities. So can you give some examples, whether it's your life or your clients, or how does that all work? Because I feel like people are always like, oh, opportunities, how?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that when you are clear and you have the courage to move forward and you do what you do in a way that reflects who you really are, you begin to magnetically attract all of the opportunities and all of the people and all of the resources you need to be phenomenally successful. And let me just give you an example of this, right? How a clear and powerful personal brand attracts opportunity. I remember being given an opportunity to go into the headquarters of Enterprise. They wanted me to do a personal branding talk for their organization. And so I go in and I'm so excited. I have like 5 VPs I'm presenting to. This is like cool, right? So I go in and I share, and I can tell that I have them eating out of the palm of my hand. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And they're like, oh, this is so good. And they were just talking about how amazing this was. And then they say, so what is your fee? And I tell them my fee. And then they went, and so I'm like, okay. But when you know your value, you stand for your value, because no one will ever pay you more than you think you're worth, right? And so they tell me, oh, well, we got 3 or 4 other speakers we're going to talk to. We'll be in touch. And I said, okay. So I leave. I get a call 2 weeks later saying, hey, Lethia, would you please come back to the office? They have more questions for you. And I said, okay. So I go back, Natalie. And as I walk into the meeting room, the person escorting me said, Lethia, you'll never believe what happened. And I said, what? She said, we flew this guy in from New York to interview him. And they, on paper, he looked perfect. But when they started asking him to do the things that you said you could do, he was like, no, I don't really do that. Or I don't do it like that. And after about 5 or 6 minutes of this, he finally said, do you all happen to know Lethia Owens? I think that's who you're looking for. So even your competitors, like, your brand should be so distinctive and so clear that even your competitors understand what's different about you and how you do things versus how they do things. Look at Barnum and Bailey, a circus of all, right? Then we had these street performers from Canada who loved doing circus type things, but they realized they needed to brand themselves in a way that was unique and distinctive. They didn't want to move around in the red ocean. There's a great book called Blue Ocean. They wanted to create a blue ocean for themselves. So they started looking for what are ways or what are things that we do that are different from what everyone else in the circus industry does? And so they started to say, hey, we're not going to have animals. And instead of come see the 3-armed lady, right? They said, we'll use performers that you don't even know their names. And we're going to, instead of trying to have low cost tickets, being in smelly 3-ring tents, we're going to have these fabulous arenas, and we're going to charge people $85 for magical productions that are theatrical and have music and storylines, right? And so they went after a different audience, still the circus, went after a different audience, but they branded themselves in a way that was so distinctive and so unique that if I went to Barnum and Bailey's and said, Barnum and Bailey Brothers, or whatever. If I said, hey, I would love a performance. I want to go to a circus that has lights and that has theatrical performances and music and, storylines. Can where are you playing that show? Barnum and Bailey's would say, oh, I think you have us confused with Cirque du Soleil. Because they are so clear in the distinction between them and the other organization. So when you have a brand that clear and you consistently show up in the marketplace with that brand, it becomes etched into the minds of the people that you are doing business with. And the whole idea of being, like, the word that I'm focused on this year is prolific. But when I first started, I was prolific. My marketing strategy was my market domination blueprint strategy, and I was everywhere. Like, you could find me everywhere. And so that's how I got ranked as the number 8 brand guru in the world. It wasn't because I worked with those 22,500 people that voted. It was because everywhere they looked, they saw Lethia Owens and, building a magnetic personal brand. And so visibility is a very strong magnet for opportunity, because people perceive you as being the best at what you do when you're constantly visible. So that's why we can't be these great gems and diamonds in the dark. We have to take our brilliance and put it out in the marketplace and just share with the world who we really are. And then we'll magnetically attract all of the people, the resources, and the opportunities that we need to be phenomenally successful.
I love that story so much. And I totally agree with that. The book, The Blue Ocean, is a great one for realizing how you're different and kind of packaging that and making it super clear. But yeah, I love that story. That's amazing. So actually, this leads perfectly into my next question. So visibility, I am totally on board. I think everyone can be a little bit more visible. And I think, especially online, it's possible to do it without necessarily flying everywhere and doing all these things. But you have a lot of experience speaking, you've written things, you've obviously done video, you've done a lot of different things. So if someone is at a point where they know they need to expand their visibility, what would you recommend they do next? So should they try to do more speaking? Should they do podcast interviews? Should they write, write a book? Or like, what are some of the best next steps for them that you can visualize?
Oh, wow. I love this question. So the very next best step is to create, become prolific in creating. So, and I say that because not everyone is going to be great on video. Not everyone is going to be great on a podcast, but find your thing and then be prolific in creating. So if you have this knack for interviewing and you are great at bringing out brilliance in people, podcasting might be your thing. If you're a phenomenal professional speaker or just speaker, video may be your thing. If you are the most amazing writer, blogging and posting on LinkedIn and writing long posts on other social media platforms may be your thing. But the key is to create and to always take it to that next level. So I know that speaking is my thing. So I needed to find more ways to speak more often and to have more visibility with regards to video. So Natalie, I just came back from creating my custom avatar. I flew to Burlington, Vermont to work with my friends at Syntax Productions. And I basically had them videotape me, and then they digitized my voice. So when I create my next course, using Access Ally, when I create my next course, I don't have to go into the studio. I send them the script. They send me back a video of me speaking those words. My content creation game in 2022, 2023, 2024 is going to be off the chain. It is going to be prolific because I've invested in a tool that will help me create content, video content like this. So I'm really, really excited to add that to my suite of tools. But for me, video content is the right thing. So figure out like how you're wired and what energizes you and create lots of that kind of content and find places to put that content. is really the overall strategy. And then if you can, if you're comfortable enough shooting a video and then ripping off the audio, make the audio available on audio platforms like Spotify, put the video on, YouTube, take the text from that message, put it on LinkedIn and on, your blog. And so I call that my market domination strategy. That's like a condensed version of it, but take your one message each week that is profound and then share it with the world in different modalities so it gets out there. And that's how I would encourage someone to take that next step to really dominating their market when it comes to, being prolific and sharing their message.
I love that. And I've never heard of that, what you just described, where they're going to record and then be able to like generate. That is beyond cool. As like a girl geek myself, I can definitely have to check that out. That's awesome.
I have a whole blueprint of it. I can send it to you and you can share it with your audience. It tells them step by step, like what to do. So I'll send that to you and you can give it to your audience as a gift.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. That's so cool. Yeah, so I love everything that you're sharing. I think you are providing so much value for people. I think, you're living up to your brand. You're totally serving and being brilliant. So thank you. So one question, you kind of mentioned using Access Ally and creating online courses. So what has online courses done for your business, or kind of what excites you about online courses right now?
Oh my gosh, this is where I get to geek out, right? So I love online businesses, and specifically, I think membership communities are going to be the way of the future, because as people learn that you don't have to stand on a stage or go to a conference to learn, so many more people now are creating courses. If you look at Leslie Daniels, who created Course from Scratch, like everybody and their brother is creating a course right now. She's become super successful. And a lot of those courses are on various platforms, but for people who really want a robust, eloquent, highly dependable membership community or course site, I've used them all because I'm a technologist, right? I've used them all, and Access Ally is the only one that has lived up to all of my expectations and exceeded them in certain areas. And so I'm really passionate about taking your brilliance, packaging it in a brand, and then sharing it with the world. And when you can do that, you can monetize it. And so having a resource like an Access Ally or a website that allows you to monetize your brilliance is a game changer, right? So I have a certification that I just created called Certify Your Brilliance. And it basically teaches people how to take what it is that they know, their book, their course, or their coaching method, and turn it into a certification program. It's called Certify Your Brilliance. And so like there was just no question about what tool I was going to use to share that with the world, because I know that is a 2 kind of a project, right? I'm expecting it to be a 2 project, and we're launching it soon. So when you have the right tools, you can go farther faster. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Everything looks like a nail. And so I have actually built systems and made many mistakes. And one of the things that I did wrong is I chose platforms in the past where you couldn't get great support. So you can pick a tool and it may be cheap to get started, but when it comes to trying to create your complex or this big idea that you have in your head, it might not be able to conform to the bigness of your vision. And that's pretty much why I only build membership sites with Access Ally, because we can create whatever my client can conceive. Whatever they can conceive, we can make it work. Between WordPress and Access Ally together, we've got you, is what I tell them. So leveraging your brilliance in an online platform and monetizing it is the great accelerator and amplifier from a revenue generation perspective as we move forward in digital marketing and what we're doing.
I love it. And I thank you for saying all those kind of things about Access Ally too. And so tell me more about, if someone wants to work with you and your team, and I love what you said about kind of this being a legacy business that you can have your grandchildren step into. So tell us more about like, who are your ideal clients? What types of, I love the Certify Your Brilliance too. What type of programs do you love to work on with people in their companies?
So from a working with me one-on-one, there are only a couple of ways that you can work with me. Going with me to Dubai on my 7-day mastermind retreat, where I help people really strategize on taking their business and their brand to the next level. We're actually leaving in 2 weeks and I am so excited. So we go, next year will be the first time. We're going twice a year. We're going in April and we're doing it again in October. So people, if they're interested, the best way to reach me is through my email, Lethia at gamechangers, that's plural, INT.com, Lethia at gamechangersint.com, or you can go to gamechangersint.com to learn about me. But the Game Changers Mastermind Retreat is one way to work with me, or Call Kayla is the website where you can learn more about our web development services. And I actually made the decision once we became certified through Access Ally, I made the decision that I only really want to work with clients that want to build membership or course sites. So we are in the process of redoing our brand to make our Call Kayla, CALLKAYLA.com website featured more on course sites and membership sites. If someone comes to me and they need another site, I have a couple of colleagues, so you can still talk to me if you have a regular site. But I typically refer those to someone else that I know I can trust to do a great job for you. Because again, in branding, like, how are we going to separate ourselves as a web development company? We're going to become super niched and super successful at building course and membership sites. And Certify Your Brilliance is for people who have courses, right? Courses, books, or coaching methods, right? So all of it is really coming together. And for those of you listening who have multiple businesses, what I realized is I wanted to create businesses that complemented each other. So if I, sell a website, I might also be able to sell a copy of Certify Your Brilliance, or I might get booked to speak at some conference because they know that I know how to do these things. And so I have my businesses very interwoven. So it feels like running one empire that has multiple legs, and all the legs are connected to the same body. It's not like I got something over there and something over there. They're all really interconnected. So that really excites me. And I just love what I get to do every day.
I love how you did that. It's so well thought out and strategic, but also it serves people more, right? Because oh, you're probably going to need a website once you're going to turn your book into a course, and I can also teach you how to do that. So it's super brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing also about your Dubai mastermind. That sounds incredible. I don't know if there's any spots left, but even for future ones, I think people can go and apply for that. That sounds incredible.
Yeah. And that's gamechangersretreat.com. And we're full for the October one, but the April one has, I think, 4 more seats left. And so, yeah, someone wants to join us.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So if someone is listening and they've loved everything, they're going to go check out your website, they're going to go probably work with you. What is one thing you would leave them with? Kind of one idea or reminder or something to kind of keep them inspired after they stop watching?
Yeah, I would say that I would love to encourage them to really surround them. I mean, we're living in a world where we've been so isolated, and we've learned how to now do life online because of the pandemic. And I think we're getting to that place where we're thirsting after real relationships. And so in your marketing, my biggest suggestion would be just be real in everything you do. Thirst after and go after real relationships. Some of my greatest opportunities have come in this last couple of years from real relationships that I nurtured. And having I found this woman in a I would have never found her probably myself, because there is no one else who does what she does. And I searched for, someone else, and there's no one else who does what she does. She's an attorney, but she writes agreements for certification programs. So if I'm going to certify you in my IP, she specializes in contracts, agreements for that. And I'm like, I need her, right? But that came from a relationship. And so nurturing relationships, really being mindful of pouring into people and nurturing those relationships, and do that in marketing, right? When you're marketing, promote someone else, right? Like go online instead of talking about yourself today. Why don't you talk about someone that you met who you absolutely are in love with their brand or how they do whatever they do? Share them with the world. And that kind of stuff, it comes back like a boomerang, it comes back to us. And so I would just want to encourage them. I know it's not a, technical 1-2 step for marketing or branding or anything like that, but it really is the relationship side of things, because I believe that a lot of our success comes from the relationships that we have. Not that you build relationships to get something from people, but it's a natural byproduct of having beautiful, strong relationships. And so I would encourage people to focus on that.
I love that. Yes. And it's definitely something that resonates a lot for me. And sometimes, we're afraid of connecting with people because we're so used to being behind our screens and not thinking, oh, there's another human on the other side, and they'll love having us share them, or they'll love getting an email from us, or, whatever it is. Right. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's super actionable. And when you finish watching this, go and shout out Lethia, shout out one of your new buddies that you just met and that you think would be beneficial for your people. So yeah, I think that's super actionable. Well, thank you so much, Lethia, for being here with us live. You have shared so much brilliance, and we're going to share links to all the stuff that you talked about, and people can go and download all the good things from your website too.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And I'm just really, like I said, excited to be here and to share with your audience the brilliance that I have to share in the world. And I will definitely get over to you the market domination blueprint, so you can share it with your people to be a free gift. They don't have to put in the name or email or anything like that. That's just my generosity, but it's the thing that helped me to show up, or as I say, be seen everywhere. And I would love to give that to whoever's watching today.
Thank you so much. I think everyone's going to be like, give me that. I'm ready, ready to be seen everywhere.
All right, I'll give it over to you today.
Thank you. That's amazing, Lethia. Well, thanks again. And yeah, we will catch you in the next episode of the Seamless Scaling Show. And I will stop our live.
Bye-bye.
Oh, you were amazing, Lethia. Oh my God.
Oh, thank you. I'm putting into the chat. I'm putting into the chat the link that you can share with people. And it's the blueprint. It's the market domination blueprint.